James and I always had a strange connection. We could talk about anything, for hours, and neither my first husband nor I ever felt awkward about it. In hindsight, maybe that was the problem. If we had acknowledged it earlier, if we'd shown even a hint of discomfort, we might have avoided one of the most painful chapters of our lives. My name is Anne, and this is the story of how I lost the life I thought was perfect. Though I'm remarried now to a wonderful man, I still carry the weight of that night and its consequences. I share this not because I'm proud of it, but because maybe someone out there can learn from my mistakes. Even though fate was kind to me after the storm, I'm still paying for the choices I made. Tommy, my first husband, and I got married on Valentine's Day. He was my high school sweetheart, and I believed we were destined for each other. He was my first love, first kiss, first everything. Our relationship blossomed after high school, even though we went to different colleges. Distance never seemed to be a problem. We stayed close, shared every detail of our lives, and kept our love strong. But everything changed. Looking back, I realize how fragile even the strongest bonds can be. Tommy was the love of my life, and I was his. At least, that's what I thought. Tommy and I were the perfect couple, or so it seemed. He graduated with a degree in civil engineering, and I finished with a degree in English literature. He even came to my graduation, proud as ever, watching me give the speech for our class. That day, he surprised me by proposing in front of our friends and family. It was magical, and I was convinced we were on our way to our happily ever after. Our wedding was like a dream. We got married under the tree where we had our first kiss, surrounded by loved ones. Everything felt perfect. Tommy whispered in my ear during our first dance, "Nothing will ever change my love for you." At that moment, I believed him with all my heart. We were soulmates, and I couldn't imagine a world where anything came between us. The first few years of marriage were everything I'd hoped for. Tommy was doing well in his job, and I had published my first book, which was a success. We were both thriving in our careers, supporting each other every step of the way. Then came the promotion that changed everything. Tommy was promoted to senior engineer, which came with a bigger paycheck, a new house, and a company car. He was over the moon, and so was I. It felt like life couldn't get any better. The move to the new house was the start of something I couldn't see coming. I was excited about decorating our new home, filling it with art and beauty. But it was during one of my trips to an art shop that I met James, a neighbor I had never noticed before. He approached me with a simple comment, one that caught my attention. "These vases are a morbid waste of money," he said with a thick London accent. I laughed it off and started talking with him. James lived across the street, and after that day, we became friends. He was an accomplished artist, and as a writer, I found his world fascinating. He had traveled all over, exhibited his works in famous galleries, and had a way of telling stories that made you want to listen forever. Tommy liked him too, and we'd often invite him over for dinner. I thought it was innocent at first, just two creative minds connecting. But soon, my feelings for James became more complicated. The turning point was the day I went to James's house alone. Tommy was at work, and I was struggling with writer's block. From my study, I could see James outside, shirtless, painting while moving to music only he could hear. Something about the scene drew me in. I grabbed a book and a bottle of whiskey and headed over. I knew it wasn't appropriate, but I convinced myself it was harmless. I told myself I just needed a change of environment, something to spark creativity. James welcomed me with his usual smile, and before long, we were drinking and talking about art. His paintings that day were different, erotic, intense. I had never seen that side of him before, and it sparked something in me. The atmosphere between us shifted. There was tension, an unspoken attraction that grew with each passing moment. As we talked, I couldn't help but feel his eyes on me, undressing me with every glance. But then, the spell broke. I heard Tommy's car pull into the driveway, and I quickly left, trying to shake off the strange feelings that had taken hold of me. I told myself it was nothing, just a momentary lapse. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The next day, James came to our house. Tommy was at work, and I was still in my nightgown. He didn't knock, just walked right in, carrying a bottle of rum and one of his unfinished paintings. I should have been alarmed by his audacity, but instead, I was drawn in. He looked at me with the same intensity as the day before, and I knew what he wanted. Without a word, he came closer and attempted to remove my nightgown. I backed away, shocked but tempted. He wanted me to pose for him, to be his muse, naked and vulnerable in front of his canvas. It felt exciting, dangerous. I hesitated, thinking about Tommy, our life, our marriage. But then I made the decision that would change everything. I stripped for James. The look on his face was one of awe, but it wasn't just about the art anymore. He didn't pick up his brush. Instead, he pulled me close, and we kissed. One kiss led to another, and before I knew it, we were making love in the middle of his living room. It was passionate, reckless, and completely wrong. I didn't hear Tommy come home. When I looked up, he was standing there, watching us. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and tears streamed down his face. I jumped up, panicked, but there was nothing I could say. He let James leave without a word, too stunned to react violently. Tommy wasn't the type to explode. Instead, he was silent, heartbroken, his world shattered in front of him. For the next month, we didn't talk about what had happened. The silence in our house was unbearable. I was drowning in guilt, but at the same time, I kept seeing James. The pull was too strong, and I was too weak to resist. Tommy tried to reach out to me, but I had already emotionally checked out. The damage was done, and I didn't know how to fix it. 2 months after the affair began, I filed for divorce. Tommy didn't fight it. He looked defeated, broken, as if he knew it was coming. The day he signed the papers, I could see the hope still lingering in his eyes, but it was too late. I had destroyed everything we had built, and there was no going back after the divorce. Everything changed. Tommy and I had been together for so long that being without him felt strange. I'd thrown away the life we'd built, and the worst part was, I didn't even feel free. I was stuck, still drawn to James, even though I knew what I was doing was destructive. Tommy moved out, and our house became a hollow shell of what it once was. The life and love we had shared were gone, replaced by a void that I tried to fill with James. He became my escape, and I convinced myself that I was happier this way. But deep down, I knew better. My relationship with James wasn't built on love or respect, it was built on lust, temptation, and the thrill of doing something forbidden. I became consumed by my affair with James. He was addictive. Whenever I wasn't with him, I thought about him, his voice, his touch, his eyes. But the more time I spent with him, the more I realized that our connection was shallow. James was an artist, a dreamer, but he was also selfish. He didn't care about what I had lost, or the pain I was carrying. He only cared about what I could give him in the moment, my body, my attention. It was never about us building something together, like it had been with Tommy. One day, about a year after the divorce, Tommy reached out to me. He had moved on, or at least was trying to, and I heard that he was dating someone new. But he wanted to talk. Maybe for closure, maybe for something else. We met at a small cafe, the same place we used to go when we first started dating. Tommy looked good, healthier, more at peace than I had expected. But when we sat down, the conversation was hard. He wasn't angry with me, which somehow made it worse. He just wanted to understand what had gone wrong, why I had done what I did. And I couldn't give him a good answer. I stumbled over my words, trying to explain how I had felt neglected when he got the promotion, how I had found comfort in James. But none of it really justified what I had done. I thought we were happy, Tommy said, his voice soft but steady. I thought I was enough for you. You were, I said, and I meant it. But I don't know what happened. I was stupid. I ruined everything. There was a long pause, and I could see the hurt in his eyes, even after all this time. You didn't just ruin us, Anne. You ruined yourself. That hit me harder than anything else he could have said. Because it was true. I had lost not only Tommy but also the person I used to be. I had become someone I didn't even recognize anymore, someone who betrayed the person she loved most, who let temptation destroy her life. We said our goodbyes, and as I watched Tommy walk away, I realized that I had lost something I would never get back. He was the love of my life, and I had thrown him away for something that wasn't even real. James was just a fantasy, and one that couldn't last. After that meeting, I tried to make things work with James, but it was never the same. The passion that had once consumed us started to fade. Without the excitement of sneaking around, our relationship lost its spark. We had nothing to talk about, nothing to build on. James was never going to be the partner I needed, he was an escape, not a future. Eventually, James grew distant. He started focusing more on his art, traveling to different exhibitions, and spending less time with me. One day, he told me he was moving back to London for a few months to work on a new collection. He didn't ask me to come with him, and I didn't offer to follow. We both knew our relationship had run its course. The day he left, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I was finally free of the toxic hold he had over me. Sadness because I realized I was now truly alone. Tommy had moved on, and James was out of my life. I had nothing left but the wreckage of my decisions. I threw myself into my work, writing to cope with the emptiness I felt. My second book wasn't as successful as the first, but it gave me something to focus on. I tried dating again, but nothing felt right. Every relationship I entered into was tainted by the fear that I would ruin it, just like I had ruined my marriage with Tommy. Over the years, I married twice more, but neither of those marriages lasted. Both ended because I cheated, just like I had with Tommy. It was as if once I had crossed that line, there was no going back. I had become the kind of person I never thought I would be, someone who couldn't stay loyal, who couldn't find happiness in what she had. I see Tommy's life from afar now. He's remarried, has 3 beautiful children, and seems happy. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never met James, if I had been faithful to Tommy. Would we have built the family I always dreamed of? Would we have grown old together, still madly in love? But I can't turn back time. All I can do is live with the consequences of my actions. I've come to accept that my life took the path it did because of choices I made, and I'm the one who has to live with that now. Here I am, living with the weight of my decisions. Tommy has moved on and built a life filled with love and stability. Meanwhile, I've stumbled through 2 more marriages, both of which ended for the same reasons. It's almost like once I let infidelity into my life, it became a part of me that I couldn't shake. I don't even blame Tommy for how things ended. He was a good man, the kind of husband most people dream of. He deserved better than what I gave him, and I've come to terms with the fact that I destroyed something beautiful. The worst part is that it wasn't out of any deep unhappiness or mistreatment. I wasn't forced into James's arms because Tommy neglected me or was unkind. I did it because I let myself get swept up in a moment, in a fantasy, and it spiraled out of control. I can't undo the past. I can only try to live differently moving forward. The truth is, infidelity is like an addiction. Once you cross that line, it's so hard to come back. It changes the way you see yourself and the way you approach relationships. Every time I've gotten close to someone new, I feel that same temptation lurking, waiting for me to slip again. And most of the time, I have. I'm on my 3rd marriage now. My current husband is kind, patient, and forgiving, but I live in constant fear of repeating the same mistakes. I know that if I don't deal with the root of my issues, whatever made me betray Tommy and the others, it'll just keep happening. I can't keep letting my past define my future, but it's hard to change when you've built such a destructive pattern. James is still a part of my life, in a way. He's like a ghost that haunts me, even though we don't see each other much anymore. Every now and then, we cross paths, and it's as if nothing has changed. I know that if I go to him, I'll fall right back into the same trap. But part of me still wants to. He's the addiction I never fully kicked. I'm seeing him tomorrow, and I know how it'll end. I tell myself it's the last time, but I've said that before. This is my story, one of love lost, poor choices, and the consequences that follow. I hope that by sharing it, someone out there will think twice before making the mistakes I did. Cheating doesn't just ruin your relationship. It ruins who you are, and it's a hard thing to come back from. If you found this story thought-provoking or helpful, make sure to check out my YouTube channel for more real-life stories about relationships, heartbreak, and the tough lessons we all have to learn. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest, unfiltered content.